7th, 2022. It's 7:02 p.m. City of Somerton regular council meeting. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mayor Gerardo Naya.
Present.
Miguel Villalpando.
Present.
Councilmember Luis Galindo.
Present.
Councilmember Jesus Roldan. Councilmember Martha Garcia.
Present.
Councilmember Juan Castillo.
Present.
Councilmember Lorena Sendejas.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Does any member of the public want to address council? Call to the public. There's no one. I'm gonna go ahead and read a proclamation, Elder Abuse Awareness Day, and we have some members of our senior center here. So I'm gonna read a proclamation, then I'm gonna ask you to come forward and take a picture with council. Whereas older adults deserve to be treated with respect, dignity, to enable them to serve as leaders, mentors, volunteers, vital participating members of our communities, and whereas the mayor's office, along with City Council and Western Arizona Council of Governments, Area Agency on Aging, recognize the importance of taking action to raise awareness, prevent and address elder abuse, and whereas as a population lives longer, we are presented with an opportunity to think about our collective needs and future as a city. And ageism and social isolation are major causes of elder abuse in the United States, and recognizing that it is up to all of us to ensure that proper social structures exist so people can retain community, societal connections, reducing the likelihood of abuse. And whereas preventing abuse of older adults through maintaining and improving social supports like senior centers, human services, and transportation will allow everyone to continue to live as independently as possible and contribute to the life, vibrancy of our communities. And whereas where there is justice, there can be no abuse. Therefore, the mayor's office and members of the City Council, along with Western Arizona Council of Governments, Area Agency on Aging, urge all people to restore justice by honoring older adults. Join us in our engaging and empowering movement in putting an end to abuse. Now, therefore, I, Gerardo Anaya, Mayor of the City of Somerton, do hereby proclaim June 15th, 2022 as Elder Abuse Awareness Day and encourage all citizens to recognize and celebrate older adults and their ongoing contributions to the success, vitality of our community, and urge all citizens to continue their support of the Somerton Senior Center's programs and activities. Pues los voy a invitar que pasen, vamos a tomar una foto y
No se pueden parar. No.
Si gustan quedarse, se pueden quedar. Si no, esto va para largo. Los invitamos que se queden.
Gracias.
Espero que el mayor vaya a visitar más al centro.
No, sí.
El día de la enchilada, dije, ¿quién es ese?
Hagan una junta a las 5 para poder ir. Voy a ir. Que engordé, pues.
Es que engordó, o sea, no lo conocieron. Te ves emplacado.
Moving on to consent agenda, we have 4 items. Approval of minutes for meeting of April 5th, 2022, meeting of April 19th, 2022, work session of May 3rd, 2022, and council meeting of May 3rd, 2022. Also, there's check register for the month of May 2022, approval of contract with KAY Contractors, the lowest responsible bidder for the wastewater treatment plant bar screen installation project in the base bid of $96,223.97. Approval to award construction contract to the lowest responsible bidder, CEMEX Construction Materials, in the base bid amount of $2,140,724.85 for the construction of the Parkview Commerce Center improvements. Does any member of council want to remove an item from consent agenda? Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I would like to remove 6.4, please.
Okay, the Vice Mayor, we're going to remove 6.4 for discussion. Any member of council want to remove another item? I'm going to entertain the motion for the first 3 items, and then we're going to discuss 6.4.
Second.
So, motion by Councilwoman Sendejas, second by by Vice Mayor Villalpando. Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so for item 6.4, Mayor, I just want to confirm that all the property that we have there is agreements in place for the property owners to pay their prorated share of the $2.1 million. And I guess that's a question for administration to make sure that we do have those agreements in place.
For 4 of them, Mayor, for 4 of them, actually there are properties, so those haven't been sold. For 2 of them, there is language on them. And for the last one for Sunset, that one is raw land. They did send a letter that stated that they know that the infrastructure cost is a separate cost from raw land.
So, but in the letter, they didn't specify that they would be willing to pay for those amounts, correct?
Correct, it didn't specify, but
no, hold on. The letter does specify that they are in agreement to. Let me pull it up. Hold on.
Was that the letter that was sent to us kind of like prior to the meeting?
yes, this morning, we just received it this morning as well.
Which brings me back to my point, to another point I want to make is that we gave clear direction that this had to be a part of the purchases. And let me remind you, that was a directive by council as a whole. And administration does not have the authority to divert from that. I don't care if it's Sunset Community Clinic or whoever, if they don't want to contribute towards this cost, then I'd rather not sell them the property, to be honest with you. I mean, it's this property is going to hold quite a bit of value, and it's going to be in quite a bit of demand. So if whoever doesn't want to contribute, I'm not going to stick the bill to the taxpayers. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. So I don't mind approving this with a contingency that even Sunset Clinic is paying their fair share. But again, staff does not have the authority to divert from the directive that they were given.
So
Back to the letter, it doesn't state, I mean, it states that they understand that there's going to be the additional fees, but it does say that they're going to enter into developmental agreement. So it really doesn't specify that whatever the amount the city is going to charge them, they're going to pay for it. They're going to enter and they want to negotiate. So do they know it's not negotiable?
So the letter states that we understand that there are site-specific developments that they need. In other words, stuff that's not the standard that we're going to put in, but also shared costs, which Sunset will be responsible to pay based on a pro rata methodology. So they are stating in a letter to us that they will reimburse their pro rata share of whatever infrastructure, the standard infrastructure that we're putting in there.
Okay, which brings me back to my previous comment. If they're not willing to pay their portion, then I'm sorry, I'm willing not to sell them the land. You know, I think we should hold on to it if they're not willing to. It's not up for negotiation. Again, I'm not going to let the tax dollars or the taxpayers pay for that infrastructure. From day one, I've said it. We're not in the business of being developers, and this whole process has gotten a little bit messy. So, at least for me, I'm not willing to forego on any monies to them or anybody else.
gonna put it in the motion.
Yeah, well,
I just wanted to make a comment on six. Oh, sorry. I wanted to make a comment on 6.4. I know in our work session, Zarina, I believe, or maybe I misunderstood it, but I believe in it was allocated. We had 2.6 million, but here we see 2.2. Is there something that I'm missing?
Yes, there's an additional project in there for the road, the Park Avenue Road, Parkview Avenue from Main Street to the end of the high school. So that's the difference between the budget and this.
And the city is picking up that then? We're not going to get reimbursed on that?
Not that portion, because that's part of development fees, and that's being paid for by the sale of property.
Yes, it is. Half of that road, portion of half of that road.
Oh, that's right.
Is ours because it's part of the park. The
Mm-hmm.
other portion is the high schools, which it's part of the development agreement that they'll pay in that portion of that road.
I just saw that difference and I just wanted to make sure that I was on the right page. But I do agree with the vice mayor on not going through the sale if we don't get that verbiage, that non-negotiable reimbursement rate that we need.
I have a quick question. Legally, can we hold that letter as?
I think for the purposes of this discussion, Mayor and Council, my recommendation would ask that we convene an e-session so that I can give you advice on where we're at right now and what the legal consequences are at this point.
okay. Mayor, with that said, then I'll make a motion to table this item.
Okay.
Do you want to table it to a later time on the agenda today after e-session or at?
Well, we can't discuss it in e-session because it's not an item on e-session.
No, so
Unless
the open meeting laws do allow us to meet on e-session on any item properly noticed on the agenda. So that is an item that's properly noticed.
properly noticed
you
under
can request-
e-session or regular session?
You can request legal advice on any of the items that are listed on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, well,
Wait till the end.
yeah, we'll wait till the end.
So we're gonna move this to the end.
Okay, that'll work.
We have two presentations. One presentation by Auditor Chad B. Atkinson on fiscal year 2021 financial statement audit.
Mayor, council members, Zarina Gallegos, Finance Director. These attachments are essentially all the financials and the letters to council from the auditors, and the presentation is towards the end. Chad, our lead auditor, is on Zoom. He will be conducting the presentation. So Chad, are you on?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Great. I can hear you. Thank you so much for being with us, Chad. I'll go ahead and let you get started.
Okay. And Zarina, I'm assuming you're going to move through the slides for me. Is that correct?
Yes, that's fine. I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, members of the council, it's nice to be with you tonight to present the fiscal year 2021 audit. I'm Chad Atkinson. I'm a partner with Hinton Burdick CPAs and Advisors. We've worked with the city for a number of years, and so it's nice to be able to present this tonight and invite any questions that you may have as we go along here. I'm going to go to my first introduction slide and just hit a couple of things here. I wanted to say thanks to the city staff for helping us get through the audit process. We ask a lot of questions and we request a lot of things to look at. So we appreciate Zarina and her team responding to those requests. We also wanted to say thank you to Keddington and Christensen CPAs. They are an accounting firm that the city is contracted with to assist with year-end adjustments, reconciliations, and those kinds of things. And they definitely provided a lot of information as part of the audit as well. So we appreciate their efforts. I wanted to make one comment on the audit submission. Things are going pretty well with the audit process, but I did want to point out that the audit was completed after the deadline for the state requirements. So we're presenting this. This is basically the audited information as of last June 30, 2021, and just barely getting to the presentation here. So the audit submission, to the timeliness is an issue, and we've talked with Zarina about that. We're working on that process to try to speed it up a little bit, but I did want to point that out in my introduction here today. If you have a chance to read the entire financial statement package, that's wonderful. But if you need to get a little bit of a summary of what's going on with the city, I would recommend the management's discussion and analysis that starts on page 10. That document, it's about 5 to 10 pages, is supposed to summarize the main events for fiscal year 2021. Okay, so I'm going to go through audit reports first. First of all, the independent auditor's report is on page 1 in your financial statements. And we issued an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financial statements as presented. We don't believe there's any material misstatements or adjustments that need to be made. So that's the opinion that you want on your financial statements. That's the best that you can get. And so happy to report that. On another report that we issue is on page 111 in your financial statements, and that's a report on internal controls over financial reporting and on compliance. And in this report, we go through and we review the internal controls for the city and also compliance items, and anything that comes to our attention, we report to you. And so we're happy to report that there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in 2021, and that would pertain to controls, the internal controls for the city. So we're happy to report there's no instances, reportable instances for you to be aware of. Let's turn over to the next slide. We do a report on state legal compliance. It's on page 113. And also we issue a separate letter of findings and recommendations, which you should find in this package that's been sent to you. There were 4 compliance matters that we wanted to bring to your attention. 2017-001 expenditures over budget. There were a few departments in the general fund that had exceeded their budgets, their finalized budgets, and so we wanted to point those out. Overall, the general fund was under budget in total, but there were a few departments that exceeded those, and that was economic development, city clerk, and human resources. So wanted to point that out as a compliance matter, and that was 2017-001. Now 2018-003, outstanding court checks. We do some procedures on the court, the municipal court, review some of their information there, and there are some requirements on dealing with outstanding checks that don't get cashed. And so there was a finding here that was related to the Arizona statutes pertaining to outstanding checks. So this is a simple follow-through item that just needs to be taken care of with the court's checking account. Then a new finding, 2021-001 PRS funding policy. The condition that we found here is that the funding policy for public safety retirement plans should be posted on the city's website. We were unable to locate it there, so we're simply recommending that you do that in our recommendations and put that policy, make it available to the public that way. So that was that finding. Again, some of these are minor, but wanted to call these to your attention. As soon as I get done here, I'll ask if you have any questions about any of these. And then finally, 2021-002, the annual report on development fee assessment. Their Arizona law that requires that the development fees, you should submit an annual report accounting for the collection and use of the fees. And this report should be submitted to the city clerk within 90 days. And the condition that we found was that the city did not submit to the city clerk the required annual accounting for the collection and use of development fees within 90 days after year end. So we're simply recommending that you complete that report timely and get it done, submitted within 90 days. Okay, so I'm going to pause for just a moment and see if you have any questions that I can cover on these compliance findings.
You mentioned this audit was late. How late was it?
I believe the deadline is March 31st. And I think that the final reports were finally submitted in, I'd have to go back. I think it was in the middle of April, I want to say. Might have been a little bit after that, but finally got submitted to the state and through the data collection process as well.
It was April 13th.
April 13th. There you go.
Well, what are the consequences for a late audit?
Consequences for a late audit are a little bit different by state. I do a little bit of practicing in the state of Utah, and they actually withhold your funds if you don't submit your audit on time. In Arizona, I don't know if there's any real bite to that other than you have to post it. You're supposed to post this on your website that you're late, and then the state becomes aware of that. And you may, I don't know if they send letters. Zarina, have you seen letters or anything like that?
So I did post that it was late, but it would be submitted within the 2 weeks. And when I submitted it to the state, I didn't hear back from them with regards to any adverse consequences for that.
Okay. So that, I guess that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
The draft was actually posted. It was just not the final report.
Any other questions or comments from council?
One question, Mayor. That
Councilman-
outstanding court checks, how many were there and what was the amount? How much money?
Let's see if I have I don't know if I have that detailed in the finding. I can certainly find out for you and get back to you on that. Let me get back to you. Actually, yeah, I'll send it to Zarina, but if you will follow up with her, I'll send the number of checks and the amounts and things like that.
Well, thank you. I have a comment, Mayor. I mean, why were we like 2 weeks late on the information? Can we elaborate on that?
Yes, it came down to staffing. I really needed additional staff, and we had several people out throughout the year. And so I did contact the Keddington and Christensen for additional support. I had brought their time down over the last several months. And so I had to engage them to come in and help me with the audit again. So I had it so that we weren't paying them out so much, but with positions being not vacant, but they weren't full the entire year, I had a hard time getting all that work completed. So I had to engage them towards the end of the year to help me with the audit.
And I guess what would be the the plan of action for this upcoming year to ensure that it is submitted on a timely manner?
So with regards to our to Keddington, I will be re-engaging them to come in and help me additionally from the end of the year going forward. They've already started increasing the hours spent with the adjustments and entries for me. So it just boiled down to I had less of their help because I was trying to get it done all internally without having them without having their support, and it just didn't work out. So for this upcoming year, I've already engaged them to come in, and for this 2023 fiscal year, I'll be increasing their services.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You had mentioned that there was no control issues whatsoever. Did you also look at our billing process for the ambulance?
The billing process for the ambulance, it does get a review from us. I believe we do a walkthrough of that. It's been several months since I've looked at the work papers, but I believe that did take place. And I think that I was contacted recently by Zarina regarding that. And I think that Keddington and Christensen is actually spending some time in that area as well to give you some coverage there.
And so to add to that, the issue with the ambulance billing didn't begin until 2022.
So this is 2021?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, okay. Got it.
The annual report on the development fee assessment, that was late too?
Yes, I believe that was just submitted after the 90-day requirement. Yep.
So it's 90-day every quarter, or is it?
It's an annual report, and it's supposed to be submitted. Let's see. The report shall be submitted to the city clerk within 90 days after the year end. Great questions. To add to what Zarina said, accountants and auditors are a little bit scarce right now. There is some turnover in the industry, and it's hard to get accounting staff and auditing people. So I can appreciate Zarina's situation, just being a little bit short-staffed and trying to get to everything. So anything else there?
Any other questions? No, go ahead.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, the next report I wanted to touch on has to do with, it's actually in a separate reporting package, and it's pertaining to your single audit. The single audit is an audit over your federal awards that the city receives. And we usually do that as a separate package, just because we don't always do it every year. So I'll just give you a brief report on that. We did the audit on the coronavirus relief funds that the city received. There were no findings there. And also the city has had enough single audits in a row that it qualifies to be a low risk auditee. So because it's internal controls and compliance with federal awards have been good, then they're considered low risk. So that's something to applaud and to be happy about for the city. Okay, so that's just a brief report on the single audit. That's all been submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Let's go to fund financial highlights. And I'm going to go over a couple of things. I don't know if we'll be able to flip back and forth here, but you have what's called governmental funds, and then you have proprietary funds. The governmental funds, like the general fund, and then some proprietary fund information would be your water fund, sewer fund, sanitation, that kind of thing. And in the next accompanying slides that I go through, I'm going to go over what was the equity or fund balance or net position. Those are kind of used interchangeably. What were the resources on hand at the end of the fiscal year? And I have some charts in here that show the major funds that the city has, and then what the resources were in those funds at the end of the year. So let's go to the next slide, which will be on the general fund. And I'm going to give you just a little rundown on the general fund. This is the fund balances in the general fund over the last 5 years. And you can see we have a good northeast trend for fiscal year 21. Things have improved. I mentioned earlier that the general fund expenditures did exceed the approved departmental budgets in human resources, city clerk, and economic development departments. But overall, the expenditures were under the budget by 4.5 million. The change in the fund balance was an increase of 1.6 million, as you can see on this chart. The restricted amount, which is the bottom line here, I believe it's red on your screen, is set aside for capital outlay or construction projects. And then also that's 871,000 is set aside for capital outlay. And then 71,000 is set aside for parks and recreation projects.
If I may, Chad, I would just like to clarify for council that the general fund also, you do include the restricted funds from development fees within the general fund, right?
That's correct, yeah.
That's right. So this restricted amount is associated with the development fees that we are only statutorily allowed to utilize for these capital improvements. So it's not really general fund available for use. It's specifically for projects within the IIP, within the IIP for development projects.
Great clarification. Thank you. So the total fund balance, if you add the restricted and the unrestricted together, is at 5.5 million. And unassigned is 4.4. Currently, the city has 5.8 months of operating reserves. And the minimum reserve balance that's recommended for a general fund is 2 months. So the city's in good shape as far as reserves go in the general fund.
Just another clarification is that within the general fund, what is expressed on the financials is also the items for COVID relief or ARPA funds. That's part of that fund balance. So it's really taking into account all those funds together. And it's not really just what we can expend for general fund purposes. Chad, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that was pretty typical of the coronavirus situation. Usually most of the cities and towns that I saw got a little bit of a bump in their general fund for the coronavirus relief funds that came in.
So if you recall in the presentation before, when I indicated general fund expenditures and revenues, what I presented to you is net of all those grant funds. That means that it's only what we are able to utilize outside of those grant funds. I essentially deconstructed it so that it's clear what is for those grants versus what's included in the general fund for financial statement purposes. Stay here for now.
Okay, I'll keep going with the general fund. So general fund is good. It's stable right now. And let's go ahead and turn to the next slide and go to Highway User Revenue Fund. This is just another major fund, and you can see that it's trending pretty in the middle of this graph over the last 5 years. At the end of the year, it was $907,000 in fund balance. This is the fund that receives state gas tax revenues and uses those funds specifically for road construction and maintenance. During the year, there was a decrease in the fund balance of $270,000. So no big items on this one that I can think of, but go ahead.
And if I may, this is really where all our capital improvements for road maintenance comes from. So essentially pavement preservation, all that. So we've been utilizing those resources more. That's why you see a decrease from 2020 to 2021. Go ahead, Chad.
Okay. All right, this next fund, the debt service fund, is also large enough in terms of its resources at the end of the year. If you want to go to the next slide, there you go. That it qualifies for a major fund. One thing that I should point out with the debt service fund, it has 1.3 million in fund balance at the end of the year, but there's a little bit of a timing issue with the debt service fund. Essentially, there's funds that are transferred to the debt service fund, and then at the beginning of the fiscal year, there are some very large debt payments that are made. So at the end of the fiscal year, it looks really good, but then on July 1st, the money is swept out to make debt payments. So this is a little bit elusive on the page here because this is a point in time. This is June 30th. But on July 1st, these resources actually went down. Anything to add there, Zarina?
No, that's exactly what I wanted to mention, that at the end of the year, the funds are transferred over, and the first of the year, those are utilized for debt service payments.
Okay, let's go to the water fund next. Okay, the water fund operated within its approved budget. And this top line that's on the graph here has to do with the equipment, the system, everything that has to do with the physical assets of this fund is included in this net investment in capital assets. And the net investment in capital assets is up just slightly from last year. And it has to do with some investments that the city made in the Zocalo Gardens and a 1.2 million gallon water storage tank. So these additions were quite significant during the fiscal year, and they outpaced the depreciation on these assets. So you had a little bit of an increase there. If you go down the page here, you have a restricted amount, which is the red amount. And that restricted amount is at $329,000 at the end of the year. This is set aside for capital outlay. $290,000 is set aside for capital outlay, and then $39,000 is restricted for impact fees. So these those restricted funds are essentially, they're committed for something already and unspendable for purposes of budgeting.
The restriction is as a result of our debt covenants with WIFA.
Yeah. The unrestricted was down from 248,000. Well, it was down 453,000 during the year. And this is due to those capital investments that I just mentioned. It takes resources to build capital, right? So some of the resources were taken out of the fund and put on that top line and taken out of the bottom line. So now you're in a deficit of 151,000 for your unrestricted. So this means there's no really reserves on hand in this fund particularly. So I wanted to just point out that the council should be aware of this and should build a reserve if possible in your unrestricted amount going forward as you budget.
So if I may add, the reason why that restricted amount is low is because there were some transfers from the water fund into the wastewater fund to meet the wastewater fund loan covenants. And this year, Chad, do you mind going into the wastewater? Actually, Andrea, can you scroll down to wastewater?
Sure.
So in wastewater, no, that's it. The sewer fund or wastewater fund. There are due tos and due froms for money that is owed from the sewer to the water fund. And given that the water fund, the sewer fund's fund balance was higher, we are anticipating transferring some of those resources from the sewer fund back to the water fund. We had that conversation towards the end of the audit, correct?
Yeah.
Chad, do you recall?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Andrea, would you go back up? Okay. No.
Okay, so I'll hit the sewer fund next. That's
Okay.
the next slide. So this fund operated within its approved budget. It had a change in net position it was an increase of 541,000. And the net investment in capital assets, that top line, was down just a little bit. And that's just due to depreciation on the assets in this fund. There were some asset additions there, but the depreciation exceeded those asset additions. The asset additions in this fund were the Fulton Street and Council Avenue sewer improvements, and then the high school lift station. So I thought I'd just mention those. The restricted amount is at 1.7 million. 1 million of that is for debt service restrictions. So the debt holders want to have a reserve set aside. So that's $1 million there. And then the other 719,000 is impact fees that have been collected but haven't been utilized yet. So that's the reason for the restriction on those funds. And then finally, the unrestricted amount at the bottom has improved, but it's still in a deficit position of 356,255. So again, this is the same story as the previous fund. You have essentially no unrestricted reserves on hand, and so the council should work to replenish those to at least a few months of reserves. Any comments there?
Nope.
Okay. All right, sanitation. Sanitation operated within its approved budget. The change in net position was a decrease of 127,000. And the net investment in capital assets is down just due to depreciation on the capital assets. So it's down to 80,247. And then your unrestricted was up 149,000. So it went from 91,000 up to 241,000. So the sanitation fund currently has 3.7 months of operating expenses in reserve.
So that's as a result of the truck not coming in 2021. That will be reflected in 2022. So in 2022 is when, well, this year we received the vehicle, and you'll see those resources change.
Yeah,
as a
you'll
result.
see the top line and the bottom line kind of switch places, I think, there. Yeah. Okay. Then cash balances at the end. Your governmental cash balance was up 2.9 million. The business type cash was up 537,000. So overall, the cash was up 3.4 million. And this is a very kind of a simple slide to present, but it does give an indication of how things are going with the city. So cash is on the rise a little bit. And that has to do with some of the federal funding that you've received. So any questions on that?
It has to do with the federal funding that we've received and not yet spent. So we also have to keep that in mind. As well as the debt service payment that really leaves our bank account at the end of the next fiscal year.
Yes, correct. Okay, and then my final slide is simply my contact information, and you're welcome to contact me at any point. Crimson Singleton is also one of my, she helps me. She's an audit director. She's very skilled and able, so we can both take questions if you have them. Do you have anything that I can go over right now with you?
Any other questions or comments? Vice Mayor?
I do. Can you go back to the previous slide, please? Okay. I'm trying to understand this. Out of the 7.5 million, how much is the money from the ARPA money?
2.4.
2.4. So that leaves me with 5.1.
You also have development fees in there, and you have other restricted items in there.
Yeah, the debt service, I can't recall what the debt service, it's probably
1.3.
like 1.3, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always asked for Chad, and maybe you could answer this question, is in order for me to really comprehend this, is I'm looking for a debt to income ratio. Serena's smiling because I always keep asking for the same darn thing. And so it's just from some rough math, it looks like I'm well over 50%.
The debt to income?
Debt to income ratio.
Well, in the general fund, it's about 10%. In the other funds, I haven't run those numbers.
And that includes payroll, includes all?
No,
all
that's, yeah, okay, so you
all-
said debt. So to me, debt is,
anything that I owe, which will include payroll, obviously, because that's
operating. It's not
well,
considered debt.
but it's still it needs to be paid out, right?
Okay, how would you answer that question, Chad?
I'm just trying to think of how to translate this. Debt to equity would be taking all of your debt for the city,
Correct.
comparing it to your fund balances or your net position. So I haven't calculated that, but that's how you would look at it. I don't have those numbers, but we could calculate those.
So it would be more of an operating to income ratio than a debt ratio?
Would be everything that the city owes.
All liabilities, loans.
All liabilities, yes.
Plus
looking at
operations?
Operation, yeah, everything.
The best place probably to look for that is probably in the financial statements themselves. I can give you the notes to look at. So the notes are on page. Let's go to page.
It's going to be past the presentation
Page 39.
of the audit. So it's going to be 39 of the document, Chad?
Yeah, 39 of the document. Yep.
Okay.
So this,
I got it. I'll look at it later.
This shows that governmental activities has debt of 22.2 million and business type activities has debt of 9.4 million.
There it is, that one.
So this is the obligations that the city has to pay. This is a good thing to review.
Thank you.
Okay.
And then you have the current portion. So that's the balance, and the current portion was what's due in that fiscal year. The next fiscal.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. It's good to be able to serve the city, and we'll see you. I guess we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
We're gonna go to Item 7.2, presentation on truth and taxation for fiscal year 2023.
This is a time of year where you get to see me a lot. So this is the truth and taxation analysis, which identifies the minimum and the maximum of the tax levy. Can you make this a little, can you zoom in or out? Yeah, they're out. So the minimum for the tax levy this year without holding truth and taxation hearing is $732,701. That is our tax levy. The maximum that we are able to levy is $768,690. Can you scroll down a little? If we levy the maximum amount, it would increase the tax bill for every 100,000 of assessed value by $7.52. Therefore, if your home is assessed at $200,000, then the increase to your property tax would be $15.02. That's the impact that the truth in taxation or the maximum levy would have on our residents. So when we have the hearing and present the resolution to you, you would be able to decide because to what extent you would choose to levy the property tax at. So the maximum levy is $768,000. Obviously, my recommendation would be to levy the maximum amount. However, I know that council is usually hesitant to do so. So that is definitely your decision. Last year, I believe the maximum was $740,000 and we levied $720,000, which was essentially half of between the maximum and the minimum. So, and currently we're on schedule to receive about that $720,000.
Is this required to do every year?
Yes.
But it's up to council to determine the percentage.
Yes.
It can be from 0 to the max.
It can be, yeah, it can be from the 1.53 that you see here to the 1.6.
Vice Mayor.
It can't be less. It has to be either that.
The minimum is 732,000.
The percentage.
No, the levy. The percentage is 1.53 in order to levy that 732,701. So the levy is the 732. The property tax rate is 1.5. So we can do the minimum, which is that 732,000 or the 1.53, or the maximum, which is the 768,000 or the 1.6062, which would increase your property tax bill by 752 per 100,000 of assessed value. Does that answer your question? So the minimum levy would be the 732,000 or 1.53, which is
my question is, it's up to council to determine. You're giving me two options, but it's up to council to determine not only those two options, any in between.
You are able to say, last year was the first year that I've experienced that you've done it, is you said, well, we don't want to levy the full 740,000. You said, well, will levy 720,000. And so that was the levy you decided that was the amount you decided to levy. And based on that, the percentage was 1.6. So yes, in essence, you can determine anywhere between the 732,000 through 768,000. Usually it's one or the other, but last year you decided to go for between. So you're welcome.
And Zareen, I have a question, just a comment. I'm looking at the table here, and I see 1.53% for the maximum and 1.53 for the minimum. But what is the max percentage?
The max
You said
percentage.
1.6? Is it one? Okay.
Yes.
So it's 1.6 or per se 1.53, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it's really not a big difference.
I just want to remind all of council that the reason we have the property tax was to do improvements to help
May I
pay the
have
debt
control? Sorry.
on the public safety building. So I personally, I don't want to levy anything more than the bare minimum, simply because, I mean, the cost of living has gone up. We're giving cost of living increases, and then all of a sudden, we're taking some of that money back.
So this is,
So my suggestion is the bare minimum.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
this PDF is one that I've illustrated in past, which shows in the, I guess I did about 9 years, 9 years. So it shows what has been levied in past. So in 2019, we did the minimum. In 2020, we did the minimum. If you look at the maximum allowable is the first portion, which is the growth of the levy and the percentage growth. Then the second part of the spreadsheet shows the minimum. The first part is the maximum. The second part is the minimum. So, and it shows how much we actually levied, how much the levy actually brought in. And there's a bottom portion that has the debt service. So the debt service associated with those improvements is the 701,000 for 2019. And you can see the debt service payment for each fiscal year and the difference between the levy, what we actually received, and the debt service payments.
So overall, what is it?
We're at a deficit in 2022 of 767,000.
That's overall.
Overall, yes. So at the end of this fiscal year, if we receive all 720,000, our deficit will decrease by 15,284.
Councilwoman Sendejas, that GATA loan, it was for the public safety facility. And the GATA loan was the bonding for all the street improvements that were done, and that what was promised to the taxpayers. So what you're saying, like currently, if you take everything that has gone to those two debt services, we're still at a deficit.
Yes, associated with the property tax levy.
Yes, I remember initially when got into council, the general fund was subsidizing those loans. Correct. But now we are we at least year to year, are we breaking even if we ignore what we are at a deficit the prior years, or are we still under with those two?
So if in 2023, we essentially the debt service payments are 712,000. So we'll be breaking even, or we'll have a surplus of 20,000 if we levy the minimum.
And the general fund has subsidized over the years 767,000.
Correct.
Also, I guess it's a presentation, so bring those options for discussion, future for,
Okay,
yeah. 'Cause, yeah,
I will do that. The public hearing is scheduled for the next council meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Andrea?
You sure? Huh? ERP, huh? Moving on to old business. We have one item, it's discussion and possible action to approve a vehicle use policy set forth as described in section 714 vehicle use under personnel policy and establish associated fringe benefits.
Council, Nico and myself, together, we're the next on April 6th, with this policy back in. So the city several years ago allowed it was at that time no policies on who allowed vehicle home and side. So keep forward, you see all of your and so when we looked at the overall and we looked at several policies that we look at some changes. Business purposes, personal defined by the IRS strips between home and work. That's the biggest issue. Year 22. There is an option, obviously, some exempt vehicles. For the procedures, personal use of a city vehicle other than looked at questions regarding some of the family children, obviously. Continue with no smoking or alcohol beverages. So one thing that I could notice here that it's good to note is that for reason stated. Employees who are required to operate a vehicle as part of their job duties, depending on determination. And continue to use liability insurance. There's no automobile that Section 274 of the Internal Revenue Code, I think there's a typo.
That section is the incorrect section, but if you approve the policy today, we'll update it to publication 15B from the Internal Revenue Service, which is the publication regarding fringe benefits.
So that being said, and going back at the list of who actually is paid. To make changes to what 6 years ago. And I think some of maybe the supervisor might obviously. Are the people
Any questions or comments? Vice Mayor?
Did you guys piggyback on somebody else's take-home policy for this particular one?
We reviewed three other or four other cities and towns, Vice Mayor Villalpando, and of those three that we reviewed, this one is the one that I believe the city of Glendale has in place. And obviously I wordsmithed to fix our own. I deleted some paragraphs that weren't pertinent to us, but for the most part, this is a policy that we believe strongly would best fit our needs.
Well, I would advise that you guys look at the rules. I mean, if those guys are jumping off of a bridge into a rocky cliff, I'm not going to be doing the jumping off the rocky down to the rocks. You guys are citing the commuting rule. Commuting rule, and I'll read it to you. It says, you can use a commuting rule if all of the following requirements are met. You provide a vehicle to an employee for use in your trade or business and for bona fide non-compensatory business reasons. You require the employee to commute in the vehicle. We're not requiring anybody to commute in the vehicle. So if we're not requiring them to commute in the vehicle, we can't use this commuting rule. You guys have to look at the fringe benefit valuation rules, general valuation rules, their cents per mile rules, not to something that really doesn't even pertain to us, because we're not requiring anybody to take vehicles home.
Okay,
So
well,
that's my
response
big,
to that, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Go ahead.
On the commuting use, yes, we currently don't have that, but every time we pass a policy, I don't want to, as legal, I would prefer to anticipate in the future, if we ever have that scenario, that's already covered. Obviously, if that doesn't pertain to us, we can strike it out, but in the future, I don't know how fast the city will grow, but if we do get a commuting vehicle where several pulled, or if we have our own city transport, I know we do use the senior citizen bus to do commuting transports, and that could apply there. So I'm always trying to
we do transports. We transport our own clients, our own seniors. This is directly to employees. Employees do not commute. We don't require employees to commute. So that's a whole different issue and a whole different scenario. Again, you guys got to read all these rules and find out which one pertains to us. Quite honestly, if you want to make it simple, then go with the cents per mile rule. I mean, it's amazing that we have to do your guys' homework at times, and quite honestly, it's a little disappointing that you guys don't take the time to do the research on this.
Any other questions or comments? One thing that was mentioned was the de minimis personal use was not allowed, but from what I read here, it is allowed. And personal use once a month, stop by the grocery store or hardware store, that type of stuff, even if it's once, at least I wouldn't agree. Just strictly, if there's a vehicle, no stopping at the store. It just leaves it open. And I think Mr. Cabrera mentioned that was not allowed, but if you read further into the policy, it does allow for de minimis personal use, being that you can stop by the store once a month, but that just leaves it subjective. I wouldn't want so people living in Yuma stopping at Walmart, once a month. Like, there's no way of tracking that, or at least it's very subjective as far as there's no accountability on that. So if this goes any further, I would like strictly for business, no stopping at stores, stopping at gas station or whatever it is. don't they gas up here, or do we gas up? Do city vehicles, do we gas up here at the Public Works, or?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
there's no sense, unless they're traveling out of Yuma County, but not from A to B.
So I guess with the information that Vice Mayor right now pointed out, are we in a position to take action on this item right now?
Probably not. What do you think, Vice Mayor?
Like I said, my recommendation is that they go back and look at all these rules. If you guys want a recommendation from me, I've read them. The only one that applies is the percent rule, and that's at 58.5 cents a mile from their home to work, and then from work to their home. That's the amount that would be allocated daily for each employee that takes vehicles home.
And like every time this comes about, what I mentioned is that, and like you have the rule. I don't know how much that would equate over a year of taking the car 5 times a week, but we need to quantify that somehow, and because that's a benefit that other agencies don't have. Like I said, public safety and people on call is something else, but just us providing a vehicle when we're always comparing ourselves to other agencies, that doesn't happen with other positions here on this list. So we gotta find something, and I don't know, does that ask the employee to be reimbursed, or how is that measured?
No, it's actually added to their, I believe their W-2 is added. Those amounts are added at the end of the year to their W-2 based on per miles at 58.5 or 58.5 cents a mile. So if somebody, it could vary. Somebody drives 20 versus somebody that drives 10. It's just going to vary depending on the distance.
It's a fringe benefit, and every year may change depending on the IRS if they change the mileage. So it is taxable, and it gets added to the W-2s. Or depending on what council may want, as a fringe benefit, that it's part of the benefit package that person, even though we might not tax it, it's part of their compensation to say if overall the total amount for that supervisor to take that vehicle overall intent for the entire year might be $3,000 or $4,000. That's part of the benefit package for them to have. Per se, person is making $80,000 a year with the additional vehicle to take home because they may be on call as well. That's an additional $5,000 part of their compensation package. It might not be taxed, but that's in order for them to stay within the city, even though their neighboring cities may pay more, but because of this benefit, the total cost is an additional $5,000.
And that is something I would strongly be against.
I wouldn't. I would be for that as a benefit for an employee.
So do you have direction? What to look at? What information we want? We're not ready to approve this.
Not really. There's two sets. One to look at either what Councilmember Garcia said and what
bring
Panto
both.
said.
There's a decision. Obviously, council's divided on it. Bring both options and we'll discuss it.
Okay.
And maybe Vice Mayor, you could also share that document to administration to make sure that we're kind of like on the same page and making sure that everything is being factored in when those recommendations are given to us.
And we can blame you if it's
Well,
incorrect.
they know it's 15B, it's document 15B. So they know where it's at. They just gotta take the time and read it.
Can we get a motion here? No? Okay. Old business. Discussion of possible action. Okay.
Motion table.
Motion by Vice Mayor Villalpando,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Sendejas. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to new business. I'm gonna move this item number 1 after item 9.4. And we're gonna go to item number 2, discussion and possible action to approve the distribution of proceeds from the Somerton UTV block event for Somerton Parks and Recreation Department and the Cocopa Veteran Wall.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brisa Garcia, Special Events. The Somerton UTV block party is around the corner. The committee is already working on potential sponsors for this year's event. The committee's objective is to continue and promote utility task vehicle safety and help its most vulnerable populations. In addition, this year the committee would like to assist the Cocopa Indian tribe with their veteran wall.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion? So motion by Councilwoman Garcia, second by Councilwoman Sendejas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Should have been a consent agenda, see? So, no questions. Item number 3, discussion and possible action to approve a contract with Last Architect for professional services relating to architecture and design work for the site planning and building design for multi-use community facility expansion project in the amount not to exceed $214,930.
Mayor and Council, this is obviously old business. During the pandemic, we found out that we needed some sort of assistance for mediation, or not mediation, but mitigating areas and or chaos that may occur in the future. So at that time, council directed us, staff, to look at either existing facilities at the community center, to look at expanding. So we went out for an RFP and received RFQs and received several bids, and the Last Architect was chosen by the committee. And this is where this is only to approve Last Architect. We still do not have, we'll bring that our next council meeting, the location of the community center expansion and or a different location. But there's several items that we need to look into for those two purposes, but this is to approve the architectural services.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion? A motion by Councilwoman Garcia.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Sendejas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're gonna go to item number 4. Discussion of possible action to approve revision to 2020 Employee Handbook Appendix B, position salary grade for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Armando Leon, HR Specialist here for the city. Today we're going to look at the an item Appendix B. This is in a current personnel policy handbook. It's at the moment needing revision, primarily because of the impact of the minimum wage going up to $13.50 in the January. So this has necessitated us to make some adjustments to some of the lower level pay grades, but also some of the positions are impacted by this pressure moving up of the minimum wage going up, puts a little bit of pressure on the bottom end of the pay scales. So at this point in time, we're recommending moving some positions to pay grade 5. That puts us at the range to meet the needs for the minimum wage. And we're also looking at, there's two parts, mainly two components to this. One will be the Appendix B body, which is positions listed from 1 through 64. And then in addition to that, at the bottom, we're recommending having some additional positions put in place for future promotions or additions to staff in the future as needs arise. So last year, when we passed when we approved this particular compensation plan, we didn't have a compensation plan in place. Now we're building a compensation structure so that we can work within that to meet the needs of the city. Do I have any questions so far? Okay, so the positions that are impacted primarily were the prep cook, maintenance worker, recreation specialist. Those positions were at the entry level previously. So now we moved them up to meet the new minimum wage. But in addition to that, I'm recommending that we move the recreation specialist and recreational coordinator a few steps up to make them more competitive with City of San Luis. And even then, we're still quite a ways below what the City of San Luis is offering. Can you scroll up just a little bit? Yes, so the positions that had an impact in pay grade were just below item 64.
Yes.
It's the prep cook, maintenance worker, recreation specialist, recreation coordinator, parks and recreation director, community development director, and economic development director. Those positions changed from what they were previously. And then below that are the additional positions that we're recommending to add. Some of them are already in the budget to be approved for this upcoming fiscal year. And some positions would be FTE neutral, but we would have them in place for us to be able to promote in some cases. This would be a good retention strategy, having positions that we can promote individuals when they meet a certain level of expertise within their field. And at this point in time, do you have any questions? And
Armando, also there's some change with Planner 1 and Planner 2.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry, for pointing that out. The Planner 1, it's actually should be at a pay level 22, and the Planner 2 is at pay level 24 at the moment.
Question is, upon approval of this salary schedule, does it mean that automatically everything that's presented is going to be approved? And if that's the case, what's the financial impact on it?
No, some of these positions are just for the structural purposes of the salary schedule, but not necessarily an FTE will go into all those positions.
In any position that's listed in there where we have an incumbent that would be moving up or changing in pay grade, we've already ran it by finance, so that's already built into that budget. So when that gets presented, it'll have those impacts. At the moment, for the most part, the primary impact are the ones are the lower level positions that went up from the previous minimum wage to the new minimum wage.
Vice Mayor.
When does the new minimum wage take in effect?
On January.
January of 2023?
Mm-hmm.
So why are we in a hurry to change them now?
we don't have to change it now, but we need to have the structure in place in order to be able to do it when the change does happen.
Okay, so we could adopt the change starting in 2023 then, in January.
Yeah,
So
how
this
we,
won't take effect right now.
no, how we phase it in, that would be up to you if you want to phase it in a certain way. That would be up to you, but we need to lay out the structure now so that so as things change, the minimum wage changes, we're prepared to move those individuals into the proper pay range.
But Mayor, there's also some positions on here that might be actually need to be filled. So those changes, might need to take effect earlier than later, just to make sure that we have a qualified person going into those positions.
So is that going to be done administratively, or does it need to come to council again for that?
Right now, that's what it is right now. But for the minimum wage for those lower positions, you can have those until January, which is the lower ones, which is the pay grade 5.
Vice Mayor.
So, and this is probably more of a question to administrator because he's the one that contributed or worked on it. Why the changes in some of these salaries for these positions? If we did it in 2022, then all of a sudden now we're increasing one, decreasing others, and then, actually increasing a couple.
This is going to be an ongoing situation. The city of San Luis did it 3 years ago and doing it again. Yuma is doing this to several positions, not because they're doing it, we're doing it, but we need to be marketable for some of these positions.
But if they did it 3 years ago and we did it last year, why wasn't this caught?
Because they're doing it now too. They're doing it this year again. For some of these positions, it's changing. It's an ever-changing battle. Even for public safety, they just changed it this year again.
Yeah, I understand for public safety, but for some of these other ones, they were done 3 years ago. So, I mean,
no,
you guys looking to do it every single time they change, we change? And are we really comparing apples to apples? Are we comparing the amount of people that they have working underneath them or the amount of people that they're serving? I think that's one of the factors that we're also not looking at. And quite honestly, it's getting to a point where I don't know if we'll be able to afford these high salaries.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But even with this salary schedule, this is not even close to the base salary of our neighboring cities. We're not even marketable, meaning that some of these positions from last year, many of them got just a base salary, and there's still a compression issue. The compression issue hasn't been fixed, meaning that a person that's been here 10, 12 years, they're still at the base salary because we didn't do anything for the compression ratio. So with the salary increase that we did last year, there's still a lower pay than our market. Now, by policy, we have to bring this to mayor and council for approval every year.
See, and then that's where I guess I'm having a hard time understanding. We're addressing all these salary scales, but we're not doing anything as far as compression. So how fair is that really to those that have been here with us throughout the years, struggling and barely making ends meet, and we're not doing anything to address those?
It would be very costly to fix that compression ratio.
Yeah,
very costly. I think
you guys are looking at these, but not looking at compression.
We have to look at the overall and looking at people not only for recruitment and retention purposes, but obviously looking at the overall revenue to make sure that we can afford.
One of the positions we recruited and we filled it up. So obviously the pay rate must not be that bad. If we're able to recruit people within, actually, it was probably a lesser rate. And so I don't think it's really a recruitment issue. I mean, we need to start addressing compression and stop putting so much focus on their entry wages, because those that have been here with us are getting left behind.
No, absolutely. We definitely agree. But we also need to look at the market conditions that have occurred these past 2 years. It's been tough for everyone across the board, not only for the city of Yuma, San Luis, Welton, but obviously even with Somerton. We hired an operator. The first one we had grade level 3, right? And he stayed left. We came back and he wanted to stay, but then obviously someone else offered more and they left, which offered, I think it was $4 or $5 more. Those are the type of conditions we normally see on a more often than we would like to.
I would like to add that you do make a good point as far as compression and our staff not moving up the salary scale, and obviously it's very expensive to do that. So both challenges are real. The compression issue is a real challenge, and also not being able to attract talent in certain positions with experience is also a real challenge. So just recently we experienced in the public works area, we posted, before we were posting only an apprentice position and attracting talent at no experience, no certifications to come in at the entry level as an apprentice. And that's what we posted a couple times in a row when we had vacancies. When we lost 2 experienced operators, we posted all the positions that we had to see what we would be able to attract. So we posted on operator 1, operator 2, operator 3, and we got really good response, really good applicants with certification and applicants that had experience, which was great. So we did attract the right talent. However, when it came down to offering and being able to get them on board, that's where we came up short. We couldn't compete with what they were already making in their current roles. So in one case, the person was making $5 an hour more than what we could offer. And in the other cases, so the top 3 candidates that we could attract, we couldn't make offers that were competitive. So so that's a real situation that it puts us in a really tough bind if we don't try to keep up with the market. So if we're always lagging behind, we save money, but at the same time, we're not able to attract the right experience for certain positions. So I think we need to think about it, not just overall, but also think strategically. When does it make sense to lag behind, and when does it make sense to have positions that are competitive with the market, depending on market conditions and so forth? It's not a one-size-fits-all. I think we need to be a little bit more strategic, since we do have very tight budgets and very limited resources. So I think we need to be smart about where we apply those dollars. And in some cases, we need to maybe be a little bit more competitive in certain positions. And in some cases, we can stay lagging behind the market.
I notice here that for 2022, hold on. Community Development Director was making 84. Next year, she'll be making 82. So we're decreasing her salary, or how's that?
Not the incumbent. The incumbent's wages not being impacted, but the comparable positions in the city of San Luis and city of Yuma were actually a little bit lower than what was previously positioned at. So the adjustment is a little bit more in line with the markets, and it's still behind what the current other cities of San Luis and city of Yuma are at.
So, but you're telling me if they make $40 an hour this year, they'll be making 39 next year?
No.
Okay, that's how it reads, because that's how I understood it too.
That's how I understand. I would say that's.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that the current person is making that amount.
Okay, that's how.
That's
how I understood it too.
Well, that's what I understood here.
No, across the salary structure is just the base. So we did the same thing we did last year, the same methodology. The methodology that we used last year was to put everybody at the base salary. And if the base salary was more, to put them on the base salary was more than whatever COLA we gave last year, then that's That's the methodology. Now, if that person is making more than the base salary, we just give a COLA.
And also one maintenance worker, 1409, and recreation special coordinator, 1409, but we're giving a raise to the recreation coordinator, but not to a maintenance worker. So I would, I wouldn't like that either.
No, I mean, if we could alleviate all of the positions and put into market, that would be great. But
I know, but the question is retention. How maybe the problem is on the department. Why not? We're keeping those employees. Why there's so much? It's
salary.
because salary, or maybe the environment. Or I don't know. We have to look into what's going on in there, because if it's a lot of turnaround, then it's not money, because people have been here with us for 20 years. But and maybe the environment, and we have to question those things. For me, I would like to question those. Why are those people there's so much turnaround, especially in that department?
And to piggyback on what Councilman Galindo is saying, that's why the exit interviews are so critical and important. We've been screaming and hollering, and you just heard it from Councilman Galindo. He wants to know why, but if we don't have exit interviews, we'll never know.
So if it was me at this point, I would not give a raise to those people and wait until I hear why it's going on, or give the maintenance department to maintenance worker.
There's a maintenance worker, as far as the definition is concerned, is a custodian.
I know still, but
mostly, obviously, the exit interviews have been done, and the ones that have left has been for salaries.
Is he education wise? What's the education? High school diploma or what?
For which position?
For coordinator, recreation.
The high school.
Does he has a proper training, or we're just high school kid?
High school diploma is what's needed, and some experience working.
And I bet if we get a maintenance custodian, it's not a maintenance or custodian like this.
It depends. It depends on the department.
Huh? They do both.
It depends on the department. Some of them, at least for parks and recreation, can be outside, and then there's custodians as well. So the definition changes depending on where they're at.
The coordinator and the recreation specialist were actually priced below what the city of San Luis and the city of San Luis currently, their recreation specialist starts at $17.78 an hour, and the recreation coordinator starts at $19.02 an hour. So they're our nearest competitor for those type of positions. The city of Yuma for the recreation coordinator is starting at $17.68.
Yeah, but if we compare to San Luis to Somerton, San Luis has 40,000. So we have 16,000 according to the census.
We're not competing dollar for dollar at 100%. We're quite a few steps below the city of San Luis.
Yeah. The way I see it is, yeah, we can compare positions, but we see that the market is dictating what positions to prioritize. We are losing a recreation specialist couple every year. Yeah, and it might be administration wise, but then again, I think this is human resources' best attempt to kind of fix that issue. We are losing operators, and it shows us that we're losing public safety. We can't fill police, so we need to see those positions of need. Yeah, if we look at with more of a, I would say, sentimental, yeah, we would look at everybody and want to give everybody, but the reality is that we got to look at those positions that we're losing. We have Sam that's losing techs every year. Recreation specialists, we got that. It's a tough job. We have it's a lot of pressure and for that pay, and they get yelled at, and everybody thinks that they're an expert in coaching and their kids. And so, I see, other times I'd be the first one to jump and say, hey, but I think this is a very, they put in a lot of thought. And yeah, there's some, if we look at it, there's some that we can point out that, okay, but then again, we got to look at the positions of need and we see our Parks and Rec department suffering. And we hear are the parents. We don't even want to go to the games because then we get ambushed. So that's the issue, And if we would be hearing people how dirty or our city holidays, and then we would like to start making changes to that. But I feel that this prioritizes what staff has been telling us and what council to bring up. We bring up the parks issues. We bring up, we hear about losing to Yuma and not having enough experience, and so I do, agree, not with all of it, but then again, I know that there was some thought with it. Everybody has opinions, but at least this, I think it's very, takes care of the issue that we have that we didn't have years past, that minimum wage is going up and doesn't address compression. Maybe next year we can look at that. Mr. Cabrera said that the policy is to bring it annually. I don't think that's accurate. I don't know. Every year, this policy annually, or did you change that?
Personnel policy handbook that states that the HR.
So years past we were breaking our policy. Yeah,
that to something different. But they're under a duty to come in and pitch this every year.
But like you say, Mayor, these are the positions that he sees and that we've brought up, and I think is very strategic from him. Of course, like you said, give it to everybody if we had the money, right? But I think on a yearly basis, he can use that strategy as far as this is where we're seeing the lack this year, and we can try and remedy it to continue being competitive.
I have a comment, and I think that, the city of Somerton for many years has been a training ground. I think we've seen it in public safety, public works. We will. But we have to understand that you did your job, what you needed to do, what best suits our city. We'll never be able to compete with our other cities, obviously because of their budgets, they're larger cities, but we need to start somewhere. We need to compensate. We need to take care of our staff if we want our city to look great and to provide that service. I'm not saying we're going to pay them so much money, but we do need to trust our HR that they're doing what they need to do in order for the best interest of our city. And, Sam, again, he loses all these people, the chief of police and the chief of fire lose all these people, and they go to other cities. And we see it at the school district all the time. They have to come and get their 2-3 years of experience, and then they leave and to go to higher wages in other states. So I see it in the city as well. So good job, Armando. I think that and the administration, we're never going to be able to compete. I understand that. We don't have the money, we don't have the budget, but at least it's something to start on.
Councilman Castillo.
Yeah, by me just looking at this information and everything, I see if it's being proposed 7.69 increase to the Parks and Rec director position, and I think that's a very high increase. How did we miss it last year? Because I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that department has always been an area of opportunity per se, within our community. And I'm also thinking right now, earlier in our work session, we talked about, a position that we needed. So now we're proposing a cost of living increase, and then some of these positions, if a position like that is really, really needed within the city to also improve the quality services that we're doing, what if for this year we kind of offset that and maybe look at those things for that to happen? I'm kind of just processing that information, and I know, Ms. and that, to me, it's not so much of a trust issue. I think I trust staff, with all the work that they do, but I think it's a very difficult situation where we need to balance the wages and we're comparing ourselves. It's really an uphill battle that I think we as council here, we're in a lose-lose situation regardless of what direction we go. But again, this is where we're here to make these tough decisions, right? But, I know for at the school, our retention is pretty high. Our retention is it's been minimal. But I feel that, have we looked at those avenues? Maybe not do a COLA, and maybe as a, instead of as a collaborative approach, say, maybe it'll be less stress or less overwhelming if we hire this additional individuals. I mean, I don't know, has that been brainstormed or anything like that or considered?
Just one comment. Last year we didn't skip it was made a decision that we weren't going to look at director salaries.
Yes, director,
so
yeah.
it wasn't that we skipped.
But even looking at this right now, I mean, I only see one position, director, getting an increase, right? If I'm not mistaken.
There are three.
Yeah, based on feedback that was provided.
Well, two are decreasing, right?
No. The range. You're understanding differently. Remember, this is just a base. So people are not in these. Either they're lower or are they higher? But this is just the base.
Yeah. So
when you look at it, so since you look at it comparably to the school district, the same thing. There's just the base. So depending on numbers of years and depending on number of education, you'll get that increase. Here, it's the same way. It's just the base, and we may have the latitude of increasing or increasing more than anything else, depending on the numbers of or experience. But because last year, remember, this structure itself, we never had it. The city of Somerton has never had a structure itself. So last year was a structure to put in place. Now we still have to clean it up. And this is part of the cleaning up. And because of the market conditions that have occurred this past year of the great resignation, as many have called it, people resigning, the loyalty is moving along. That's why you've seen people resigning, because there's no loyalty within our staffing across the board, across the nation. So people are moving depending on where the salaries are going to be. Every municipality is going through this right now. Every employer is going through this more than others. You'll see people not leaving because they've been here for a number of years. They'll stay here and they'll retire. The new hires, if we're not comparable based on the market conditions, they will leave in 3 to 4 years, maybe 6 months. And we've seen that, especially with the water operators, they are leaving. They will not stay. They will go. If there is a position open with our neighboring municipalities, they're paying $4 more than what we are, plus 6 years of experience, they'll leave. And obviously they have, including public works, police and fire. They're leaving because of the increase of $3 or $4. Vice Mayor.
You know what? This is an ongoing battle. I've been here, 17 years, and it's the same thing. So I agree with you, Councilwoman Sendejas, with everything that you said. And that is why we need to be careful when we give these fringe benefits, because they look at the bottom line, how much they're taking home per hour. Mm-hmm. And all these fringe benefits come at a cost to the city, our residents, who we're supposed to be here protecting their interests as well. And so, and I disagree with the statement that our administrator made, that we could look into doing a non-tax benefit or compensation package, because it's a fringe benefit. Fringe benefits are guided by these rules. You can't get around it. It's going to be interesting what kind of information they bring to convince me otherwise, but I hope they do their homework. But that's my biggest concern, is that we are dropping all this money on fringe benefits and we're not able to do these salary adjustments, or we have a hard time doing these salary adjustments. So next time that we sit up here and we vote on whether it's holidays, take-home vehicles, you guys got to look at the impact that it has, because all that money we could have used to adjust salaries.
I do want to make, Mayor, I would want to make a note based on the comparables, because we have to compare our neighboring municipalities no matter how we look at it. And I sent this in our weekly reports. The city of Yuma's salaries versus operations, their funding is 86% is allocated to personnel. City of San Luis, I believe, is 76. City of Somerton is more 56%. So we're closer to 50-50 in terms of operating and personnel costs. And that's a big difference between our neighbor municipalities and what we can afford and where we need to allocate our funds. And that's one thing I'm trying to make sure that for our future,
making sure some of these capital improvement projects are being funded by our grants that we need to allocate and use more on that personnel. That way we don't have these compression issues or these issues with trying to recruit and retain folks. But it's going to take time in order to start making those adjustments from operations to personnel.
To quote Mr. Councilman Castillo last year, Serena, is this sustainable?
You stole that.
Is it? Even if we're not able to recover our pending audit or those funds, so is this sustainable? Yeah.
Can you step up to the mic? I'm just kidding.
I'm down below. Any other questions or clarifications that we need to do? Again, this is just to emphasize that if we're not thinking strategically and purposely creating a plan and a structure to work with for the city in order to attract the right talent and so forth, if we don't do it strategically, then by default we're just going to have what we had in the past. And so prior to this, we basically had a no compensation structure. Everything was all over the place, and there was no strategy behind it. I think now we're in a position where we can be strategic and dedicate our resources where we feel is the greatest need. So we have positions where we have high turnover because of our competitors are going higher than where we're able to pay them. We can pay attention to those positions, and some of the other positions we can let them lag behind the market. So I think we proposed this Appendix B schedule as is. You can modify any pieces of it that you wish, and we also put it before you if you would like to set a motion to approve as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to get involved in looking at each position and more as a whole and trusting the process, I guess. But Vice Mayor, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just have one final comment. I agree with what Armando said. You know, if we don't pay, we're not going to attract better talent. With that said, I hope if we're going to be doing that, we also raise our standard on the employees that we want. And so that's been probably the biggest issue with me is that we're paying, we want to pay more, and we're being asked to pay more, but yet we're still settling for a lesser qualified candidate. So,
well, we've done some work on that as well. It does take a while to build your processes so that you're attracting the right talent and have the right salaries to attract the right talent as well. But I think over the past year and a half, we've done a better job of getting good recruitment strategies, attracting quite a bit of talent. Right now, on our open positions, we might have 60, 70 applicants for any open position, sometimes up to 100, 150 applicants for any open position. And those are all vetted individual. I go through each resume and I select the candidates that are best matched for the position based on qualifications and education requirements. And I review every single resume, and then those are then move forward to further review by the directors, and then those are then move forward to further review to finally select the interview process. So there's a process in place to try to identify the best candidates at each position, and that's done every single time.
Armando, are we doing exit strategies every time someone leaves? Is that
I'm doing an exit interview for every person that's leaving.
Interview, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those are being filed. We have a file and compiling the data.
You don't have it. You're just filing. You don't have it kind of like in a spreadsheet to look at a glance.
I don't have the full spreadsheet right now. I've had part of it, but I haven't updated in a while. But we have it electronically. Every single exit interview is kept electronically.
Mayor?
And actually, to your point, yes, we do have a spreadsheet where we're tabulating how they're responding to the questions that we have.
I would just, on that note, if you could give us an update, on our weekly update, just some of the trends that you're seeing on that.
I'd like to see maybe a 6-month report, gives you a better picture and see where the which departments are losing more people, and if there's any reason. Doesn't have to be whatever is legal, with
No names,
no names, just identify the positions, what are we, and what's the
Is it
reason.
salaries or the administration, or they just don't like the water or whatever?
Right.
Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, we could probably do one that's like a global to see what their overall responses are. And this would, because we do have some departments that might have only 1 or 2 individuals, and if you know what the position, if the position's identified, you know exactly who it was. So.
Armando, so whenever you get a negative exit interview, do you address it with the city manager, and does the city manager address it with the department head? And vice versa, when you get a positive, because sometimes, individuals are moving and they give really high props to the director. Do you make that aware to the city manager?
I don't think I've been doing a good job on that. I've been keeping it mostly to myself and just analyzing it, but
I think it is important because it goes back into the reflection of the director. And so either good or bad, I think the director needs to know so they can either, continue doing a great job or fix something that's broken. Thank you.
He does alert me when they're pretty bad. And I don't alert the director until after the person leaves.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes the information that we get is fairly candid, and candidates like to know that what they're telling us is in confidence. So I can only share so much, but and sometimes I don't necessarily want to share everything that they're thinking on an exit interview form, but they do on a side note.
Yeah, if it's salary or if it's something that at least it helps. We don't need to know the details, but yeah.
I did like your response to Councilwoman Sendeja's question, though, when you said, "No, I haven't been doing a good job." But
it's honesty.
I like the fact that you were straight up and honest, Armando. I appreciate that.
Well, I there's a lot on my plate, so I don't always address everything in a timely manner. But
you need an FT.
You need help.
There's several departments in HR and finance.
Any other questions or comments? An entertain a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
So motion by Councilwoman Garcia.
I have a question before we go up to vote. Or is this effective the 1350 now or in January? I guess it's a question for Councilwoman Garcia since she's making the motion.
I would say, well, if it's for the
Minimum
wage, it would take effect in January, correct? But
no, not if you don't give them.
Well, okay, so for the minimum wage portion of it to take effect in January. The rest I would recommend as is.
So motion by Councilwoman Garcia, second by Councilwoman Sendejas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're gonna go back to the first item. Discussion and possible action to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023. You thought you were done, huh?
No. Okay, so these are the budget forms. Essentially, we would be setting the high of the budget. We couldn't go back and increase it. Within this budget, I have built in a contingency. Can you go down? That this will work. That's okay. You can stay in Schedule A. Thank you. So the full budget, can you go down a little bit more? Sorry, is 37 million for the next fiscal year. Out of the, I'm sorry, but can you go up a little bit more? There you go. So identified here is the general fund, which is at 12.5 million. In total budget expenditure, special revenue funds are at 10.540. Debt service is at 1.7. Capital projects is where I have a built-in contingency for anything that could happen that we may need additional funding for is within the capital projects fund. Excuse me. If there are, if one of the projects come in and it's a lot higher than we anticipated, this is where we would come back to you and say, hey, this came in a lot higher. We need to transfer budget from here to a different fund, et cetera. In the enterprise funds, the total budget is $9,460,000 for a total of $37 million.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I don't have a problem with adopting the budget with the amount as stated by Ms. Gallegos. I do have some concerns due to the audit, and that's those departments that were over budget. What are we doing to rectify the situation and making sure that our budget, because we approved a budget with each department certain amount, and if they go over, it's supposed to come before City Council. When could we expect that? And also, quite honestly, to the administrator, he needs to look into this because that type of stuff shouldn't be happening. But as far as the FTEs, I kind of want to wait and hold off until the audit report for the ambulance is done, because those are revenues that aren't coming in. It could be potentially a pretty large sum. So I feel that we can proceed with the budget amount, but I don't want to give the green light on the FTEs until there's more clarification on those revenues.
So on the audit, can I have control over the mouse or over the? Thank you. So let's see. So I can pull up with regards to your question.
Not that audit.
I'm sorry?
Not that audit.
I'm trying to address the question with regards to the budget overages.
Oh, to the overage. Okay.
Yes. Let me get to it.
I don't think the amounts really matter. It's just the fact that they were disclosed and there were
right. So
there's a process already in our
right.
policy, and it wasn't followed.
So if you look at the amount for the clerk's office, it was $129. So it was not a significant amount. The economic development was $4,337, and human resources was $25,177. The reason why this went over budget is because of a credit that was taken that we shouldn't have taken in COVID, during the COVID pandemic, and because we weren't entitled, so then we had to repay that. Therefore, it wasn't budgeted within this department. With regards to economic development, some of these expenditures came in after the end of the fiscal year, and we weren't, so I wasn't aware within the fiscal year parameters that this had happened. So once I was alerted to it, then I should have brought it back to council, which is something that I am going to do this fiscal year coming up, so that if there are any adjustments, we are able to take care of them. Now, back to the budget numbers.
Vice Mayor.
Nice try, Zarina, trying to fall on the grenade, but quite honestly, it's
so
each department head is in charge of their own budget, so they're the ones that need to be on top of it. And so when stuff like this does happen, adjustments need to be made appropriately.
And so this is why I have this contingency line item, so that if it does happen and departments are in fact in a situation where they go over budget, then we would bring it to you and let you know that, you know, these are the conditions which put us in this situation, and we would need to do a budget adjustment from contingency into into whichever department. Yes, sir.
But like Vice Mayor said, and you really shouldn't happen. This department heads should be monitoring their budgets continuously for that not to happen.
Correct. Correct. So it's a matter of the department heads being aware that it's happening and checking their budgets on a regular basis, and then also, myself in alerting them, just, you know, if they don't catch it. But I just wanted to let you know what the process would be in case that happened. Hopefully it won't happen again, but that's what it would be. In terms of the ambulance billing audit, we are working with the auditors right now, and hopefully we should have something in the next couple of weeks. But until then, what I can tell you is that it looks like we will be able to recover most of those billings that haven't gone out, even the ones that are past that the 1 year mark. As a result of our situation, it seems like they do work with us to be able to recover those amounts. So I just want to reassure you that we are working on it, and I know that the fire department is doing is working on that as well. So in terms of, this is the higher portion of the budget that we can't exceed, and I have included a contingency in there for it. I hope I have addressed your questions, Councilmember Villalpando.
Yes.
Okay.
Vice.
In terms of everything that we talked about in the prior work session is within this budget. We'll have a public hearing in our next council meeting to hear the public's for or against, or any comments that they may have before adopting the final budget. If there's any adjustments that council would like to see, or anything that that you'd like done, we still have time to do that.
We're just setting the ceiling. That's
correct.
Okay. Is there a motion? Some motion by Councilwoman Garcia. Second by Councilwoman Sendejas. Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
So we're going to leave that item, the 6.4 item. We're going to go into summer current events, and then we're going to go into executive session and then come back to that item.
Mayor and Council, let me just start off with this year in terms of, I know people have heard, people have stated that we haven't done anything at the city or not a lot of projects. Let me just remind our community how many projects we have done in the past year or this fiscal year. Just to let you know also, I think Parks and Rec is going to mention something about the boxing that'll take place here in 2 weeks or so. The community center HVAC addition, a project that costs $180,000. Joe Munoz Park at $200,000. Public Works, these are the projects that are millions of dollars overall. The water treatment plant filter, $105,000. 1 million gallon water tank rehab, $960,000. Bella Vista water main project, 1.4, and most of it that was grants funded. High School Area Water Main Extension Project at 505. Somerton Heights Subdivision Water Main Replacement Project, 191,000. Water Treatment Plant number 3 design, that's 149, but an additional 2 million for next year. Purchase of 3 new utility pickups, project of 116. That's to replace our 2007 vehicles. The case is 1982, still operating. Wastewater, a high school lift station and force main, 2.2. Wastewater treatment plant bar screen, 250,000. New cameras for them at 60,000 and 11,000. There's 2 cameras. New dump truck, 148,000. The new sewer vacuum truck at 453,000. Streets, Cesar Chavez Avenue, new traffic signal and street reconstruction at 1.3 million. South Somerton drainage project at 3.6, and that was through the county. And actually, many of us are paying for those because they're part of the flood district. Heights subdivision reconstruction project at 555,000. Main Street new traffic signal and right turn. There's a design about 29,000. So Somerton Avenue might get a new traffic light here soon, which also might include a left turn. We might have to call that left turn, council member left turn. South Union Avenue at 175, and that was just completed a couple of weeks ago. 2022 pavement preservation program at 156,000. Purchased new street sweeper, because I heard that from our community members. They were getting upset at me. It's 200 and
that was the biggest this year. So
that was huge. Because we were borrowing San Luis's to assist and
send patients in San Luis.
Yes. You know, and we have helped with our side loader in San Luis as well. So we're good neighbors. Purchase a new side loader, 362,000. And major repairs for our side loader at 25,000. I just want to mention those projects just because they're really important with the level of service that we have. And even though we do get upset over rate studies and rate increases, this is the effect of that they have on the future to make sure we provide a level of service to our community folks that definitely do need it. And with that, Jesus Mesa, Parks and Rec.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I mentioned that Paracone was sprayed for unwanted vegetation. Areas in need are going to be pending. Desert Valley Senior Center received a donation of $500 from Cocopa Indian Tribe that are going to be used for senior programs like Vegas trip that is coming up towards the end of August. And finally, we're seeking quotes right now to install a new scoreboard for our community center gymnasium, which is going to be fully operational for summer programming, from flooring to the all the needs for activities for this summer. Thank you.
Chief Deanda.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. The biggest one we've had recently is we just took our oldest ambulance up to Chehalis, Washington to get remounted. And just so you have an idea of why that's a really good idea is they dismount the all aluminum box that we paid for and put on a new chassis that becomes a new ambulance. The amount will be about $205,000 versus a new ambulance like Yuma just bought for $402,000. So there's about a $200,000 savings to the taxpayers when we remount our boxes on new chassis. We've seen an uptick on the illegals here in town at the Regional Center for Border Health. Most of them have been Russian, and so that's interesting to us. A lot of pregnant women. The other one is the COVID cases. We've been running on them. We've only transported 2. But we've run on quite a few at home. And so there's an uptick in that also. And Friday, hopefully I'll meet with the pension board, and I should be 30th should be my last day here. So it's been nice working with all of you, and I'll be writing a letter to everybody.
Chief Juarez.
Mayor and Council, good evening. So we have the installation of the 911 system recording began today and it hasn't been completed yet. We're hopefully going to get that done here in the next week or so. It'll be complete, but we're already recording, so we have to finalize a couple of things. We're having a meeting with Serena and the Department of Homeland Security to go over a grant for the Operation Stone Garden. That should be something good. We've been getting a lot of money from them to have the officers work along with Border Patrol along the river and the levee road, dealing with the asylum seekers as well. I also met with the Yuma County Supervisor or Director for the voting. We're getting ready for the voting that will begin here in August, and it'll be taking place here at the community center. She was very excited to note that this is the first time the community center will be used for that purpose. So we'll be making announcements to the public about the voting location from our postings up at the station. There's also about our hires. We are short one dispatcher. We have one on leave, and we have 5 dispatchers working the floors for the dispatch center. We have one officer that we're supposed to be picking up here, a lateral officer, somebody with experience, probably here in the next month or so. We have one cadet that will be graduating that academy in June or July. I can't remember right now. June, he'll be graduating, I think, June 20th. And then we have a cadet that'll be starting the academy at Havasu on July the 25th. We have plans for coffee with the cop. I know it's going to get a little bit hot, but hopefully it'll be successful. We're planning to do it at La Cabaña, and we'll give you details as soon as we have them. Thank you.
Armando.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. So we're still continuing to recruit, actively recruit for police because even though we have candidates that are good prospects that could potentially be hired down the road, sometimes they do fall off. Something happens and then we lose them along the way. So it's an ongoing recruitment effort to try to have additional candidates ready to be interviewed for police officer and dispatcher. We're actively recruiting for part-time, full-time fire department, EMTs and paramedics. And we have a court clerk 2 position open, administrative specialist position open, that's part-time. Those we've already done the recruitment part of it. We're just waiting to do the interview part of it, interview process. And the latest one is the Parks and Recreation Director position.
Marlene.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Summary, we attended the ICSC 2022 Las Vegas conference. We had several good conversations. As a result, we have had conversations with McDonald's. The first department had a preliminary meeting for this project, has been scheduled today to take place in a week. Tuesday, June 21st. This will allow us all to review the site plans received from McDonald's and brainstorm ideas prior to our meeting. In my last communication with them today, they will be working on the engineering and then sending us their site plans. And they are interested in parcel number 5 at Parkview Commerce Center, and that is the one towards Main Street. 2, currently reaching out to the other 7 retailers we approached at the conference. 3, the sale of Old City was officially recorded this week. The new owner will have the keys tomorrow to the old City Hall building. And tomorrow we will be traveling to Puerto Peñasco to participate in Festival Regional de Pesca y Acuacultura Sonora 2022, and a panel where state reps will participate, as well as my counterpart, Economic Development Director for Tucson. The panel is titled Oportunidades de colaboración binacional en materia de desarrollo económico, turístico y de infraestructura. Opportunities for binational collaboration in the areas of economic development, tourism, and infrastructure. That's it.
That was a mouthful. The name. Serena, finance.
Yeah, Serena, we heard enough from her. No, just kidding.
She's already sending the the tentative budget.
Just drop the mic, yeah.
Okay, so I'll be working on the public hearing information for the next council meeting, the CFO designation. I'll also be working on rolling over some of those encumbrances or reviewing all of the trial balance, reviewing all the accounts for year-end entries and preparing for the next budget year. So thank you very much.
No name, Carmen. I have to say the name, and she's already coming.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Just an update on some of the ongoing projects that we have. The Del Sol Distribution Center up on the Mesa, they have applied for a variance to reduce the number of said parking lots or parking spaces that are required. So they're going to be coming before the Board of Adjustment, which is council, at the next meeting. For that, we already had a neighborhood meeting up at the site, and there were no residents attending that meeting. For Valle del Sol Phase 3 subdivision, the improvements, most of the improvements have been completed except for minor pending items within the linear retention basin. For that subdivision, there's another inspection that is going to be conducted tomorrow around 6:30 in the morning, just to make sure that all those pending items have been addressed by the developer. We also have the rezoning request for the Cocopa Rio RV Park. This request was originally scheduled for Planning and Zoning Commission on June 20th, but that is the date for the new Juneteenth holiday. So we have rescheduled that meeting, the commission meeting, for the next one, which is on July 18th. For this particular project, we had a meeting, a neighborhood meeting as well, and no one was present. The meeting was scheduled for at the site of the potential Cocopa Rio RV Park, but no one was present. And lastly, the Mojave Cannabis LLC up on the Mesa also requested a final inspection for this past Monday. We went up there and they were not ready for the final inspection, so they didn't pass. Hopefully, they're going to call us back as soon as possible so we can finalize that one. That's it. Thank you.
Sam?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. An update on our Valle Vista water main extension project. Foundation rebar package for the main drain crossing has been ordered and will be delivered on June 20th. The seal casing is being epoxy and will be delivered next week. Basically, this is the only pending item for the Valle Vista, is the crossing for the main drain. South Somerton drainage project, contractor continues addressing the punch list item. The storm lift station has been completed. The only pending on this item is for APS to provide the power. The 1 million gallon water tank rehabilitation project, contractor will mobilize the equipment and the steel material on the site on the week of June 26th. And the North Union Avenue street reconstruction project, this project has been completed. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes.
Councilwoman Garcia.
I'm just working with, getting dates for a food drive, possibly next month, but I'll bring that to you guys, hopefully next meeting, and hoping we can get volunteers.
Councilwoman Castillo.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Councilwoman Sendejas.
If I can have a few moments with you, City Manager and Chief of Police, regarding training with what happened at the Uvalde in Texas, really concerned me. You know, it's a community that is the same as ours, and I know that our chief is very well versed and very well trained, but I just want to make sure that, you know, she is receiving the necessary training because, we're never exempt from situations like this. And it would just, for the city to be able to, we'll never be prepared for something like that, but at least, our chief is receiving that necessary training. So I'll be calling you to set up a meeting just so we can kind of go over and see what there is and how, maybe other nonprofits can assist in those types of trainings to fund for you to attend. But that's all I have.
Councilman Galindo.
Nothing. I just want to thank you, all the departments, your director. You guys do a great job. You do the hard work. We just decided like a family. You guys are the kids, we're the parents. You are asking, and you have to question: do we really need it, or do we want it? Want or need? So sorry. I know you guys do the hard work, and thank you, Marlene, for the gift. That's we have.
Vice Mayor.
I don't have anything, Mayor. Thank you.
This week we had a four-fronted meeting on Monday. It was really not. It was mostly approving conferences for the person was the director. What's his executive director? And discussing different events that the region is going to participate. That was about it. And I know Councilman Roldan is not here, but I'm sure he would have said that Somerton baseball had, I think all of them going to state championship except for the 11U, but all of them. So yeah. So tell Councilman Roldan congratulations. Yeah. And we have 3 items in executive session. Is proposed ratification of sisterhood agreement with City of Puerto Peñasco and legal advice with Somerton City Attorney in order to consider its position and instruct its attorney regarding contracts that are pending or contemplated litigation involving YEPCO Industrial Park. And we're also going to discuss the item that was removed from consent agenda. So is there a motion to go into executive session? It's a motion by Councilwoman Garcia, second by Vice Mayor Villalpando. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we're going to discuss that and then come back to discuss item 6.4. We're going to take a 10-minute break. Five, okay. 5 minutes. De la cabeza, sí.
I'm done. I don't have, thank you.
Pues sí, pues ya no podemos hacer caso, ¿no?
You're gonna have a hard time proving that it could be a fringe benefit, because I can tell you right now, don't exist. If you guys would have read the rule right there, te manda una by exemptions, and you have to own 5% of the company or 1%.
Just put maybe that's.
Now,
¿Quieres quedar para la infraestructura? ¿Sí? ¿You want to stay?
Regular session, we have item 6.4. Yeah, can you read it? I don't have.
I'll read it. Mayor and Council, as discussed, invitation for bid for construction of the above mentioned project was advertised in the Yuma Daily Sun. The design work and specifications were prepared by Dahl Robinson Associates. The project involves construction of wastewater, storm drain utilities, as well as new asphalt pavement, including vertical curb and gutter, sidewalks, ramps, etc. On Thursday, May 5th, 2022, we opened 3 sealed bids. Staff reviewed and analyzed the bid submittals, and the results are attached in the bid tabulation sheet. As discussed, the lowest bidder was CEMEX Construction Materials at a bid of $2,141,724.85. The engineer cost estimate for this project was estimated at 1.2, but because of the difference of logistics and increase of price, obviously the bid went higher.
Is there any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
So motion by Vice Mayor Villalpando, second by Councilwoman Garcia. Those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. It's 9:59. Meeting's adjourned.
So Mayor, is that a lot?